BBC Sounds. Music, radio, podcasts.
Hello, I'm Phil Goodlad and this is the Scottish Football Podcast. All the news, the views, the analysis you need on Thursday the 16th of January. After some stoppage time excitement down Ibrox way.
Awkward bounce for Dorrington and Dessers is in behind him. Tobers and the goalkeeper only to beat for Dessers. He's on the left, he scores! Fine finish by Cyril Dessers.
Rangers leaving it late to seal a comfortable home win over Aberdeen. The long streak without a win may have brought some pressure, but Jimmy Tillene says that's no bad thing.
The pressure is good because then you have to grow as a person, a footballer, as a team, and you need some pressure to be better.
We'll take a deep dive into Aberdeen's season so far and ask the simple question, what's happening at the Dons? Also, is one of the window's biggest potential transfers back on?
It's a promising looking counter-attack this for Celtic. It is Kieran Tierney who can tie up the points for Celtic.
Is Kieran Tierney finally about to return to Celtic? Plus, of course, the rest of the most salacious transfer gossip affecting our beautiful game.
The Scottish Football Podcast from BBC Sports Scotland.
Great to have you along this morning, and great to have Kevin Thomson, the former Rangers and Hibs midfielder, smiling brightly this morning as one of his old sides. Really, Kevin, put in a performance last night that, you know, if you weren't looking at the score and the top of the screen, you might have thought they'd have been 5 or 6-0 up, as dominant as Rangers were.
Yeah, I think they needed it, to be honest, Phil. I think they're more than capable. I think that's the hard part for everybody else. When the Old Firm teams do turn up, they're more than capable of taking 3 or 4 off people. It's just the way it is. But it's obviously been shown that there's lots of teams that are more than capable of making it difficult for them. And albeit Aberdeen are on a bad run, we all know the rivalry between the two clubs. But I think in the end, as you mentioned, I think the scoreline in the end probably is a fair reflection on the dominance, really. But I suppose at 1-0, you're always got that twitchy bum feeling, and you just never know crossing at the box. A mistake, a bit of brilliance off one of the Aberdeen players, and everything could look so much different.
Ryan Cryle is the sports editor at the Press and Journal. Ryan, Kevin says that touchy bum, could have been a goal that come from anywhere. I would imagine for many Aberdeen fans watching last night, the problem is that they just didn't look like they would score.
No, I mean, that's kind of been the story of the now, what is it? It's now a record winless run in the league they're on, having had a record-breaking start to the season under Jimmy Tillene. It's all gone in a different direction. But yeah, I think one of the key issues at the moment is there just is a lack of goal threat. There's a lack of sort of ideas and accuracy in the final third. And as you said, Phil, it was a strange game because it was 1-0 for so long, but it felt like a 5-0 disguised as a 1-0 even at that stage, because Rangers had so many chances. I think Ross Doohan in the Aberdeen goal had another great game, stepping in for Dimitar Mitov in recent matches. But yeah, it would have been, if Aberdeen had got a point out of that game, it would have been you would have bit Rangers' hand off basically for that.
As mentioned, we're going to take a deep dive into what's going on at Aberdeen. Better minds than us can't figure it out, so I'm sure we'll give them a hand. But take nothing away from Rangers last night, Kevin, because they had a job to do and they did it. And as much as I'm scratching my head thinking, is this really the Aberdeen side that just 3 months ago were blowing Rangers off the park up at Tawdry? So we can say the same when Rangers play like that. And when it comes to playing at home, Rangers are a team without equal, only Celtic, when it comes to the record, 11 wins and a draw out of 12 matches.
Yeah, it's a funny one, Phil, and I find it difficult to put my finger on it. I mentioned, obviously, when we done the show last week, that cup tie feeling when you go away from home and the game looks different. There's more control at Ibrox, you have more possession, you have obviously the home fans on your side, etc., etc., etc. Lovely pitch, big stadium. And I can only put it down to a mentality thing that when they're on the road, they're finding it difficult when these cup tie type games come round and struggling to go over the line and struggling to cope with that 150 mile per hour type game.
Kevin, can I interrupt you there? Because I keep hearing about this mentality of being on the road. You've played professional football, we haven't. What exactly happens? Is it a case that you don't recognise the creature comforts of, in this occasion, Ibrox, so you begin to get nervous? Is it the fact that it's not that you're not backed by huge crowds, because Rangers has a huge travelling support? So what do you mean?
Just the game looks different, Phil. It's the pitches are obviously a bit more fiery. They can be a bit, but the surfaces can be more difficult. So these are things you need to deal with. Listen, every player needs to deal with that, but it's. I always felt like when you go away from home, near enough every ground you go to, it's like their cup final, whether that be the home fans or the away fans travelling, and it's something you need to deal with as a Rangers player, really, or a Celtic player. When you go to these places, you're playing against players that would love to be you. They'd like to be in your shoes. They'd like to have your jersey. They'd like to be playing for the big clubs, and you have to be able to handle that. And the only way I can feel is the best way I can describe it, Phil, is at Ibrox you have more control. It's a nicer game. It's an easier environment to play. Listen, it's a difficult environment. You pass the ball backwards and you don't score within the first 2 minutes. The crowd can be on your back. We all know that. But when you're away from home, it's sometimes like touch tackle, as I would best way to describe it, like playing five-a-sides in a wee tight kind of indoor hall or whatever. That's how the game feels, or that's how it felt like for me when I played in the middle of the pitch. It was always an extra man in midfield that you'd come up against as an opposition as a midfielder. 9 times out of 10, if you're an attacking player, they've probably got a banky 5 followed by a banky 4 in front of that. So the gaps and the distances can be smaller. You have less control. You have centre-halves probably having to run channels more balls are going in the box. Like all these type of things you have to deal with. And it's, if somebody's not explained that to Rangers and Celtic players when you first get through the door, I would be really surprised. But that's the only way I can think, because there's no getting away for the away records being has been nothing short of not good enough.
Just ask you a couple more questions on Rangers. Leon Balogun and James Tavernier coming off the bench last night. Balogun getting on the score sheet and looking really dangerous when the balls were played into the box. Rangers gathering strength in January now without actually having to go into the transfer window.
Yeah, there's no doubt the fans are rumbling that they want to see some progress. They want to, and I don't know what way the club will go. I just had a look at the table before we come on, and obviously down to 13 points. So the gap is big. I hate using that word gap, but it's there for everybody to see. And I think the recent rumblings, the grumblings that the fan base have been making for, I think the club are under pressure to either go on a massive run. As you mentioned, some of these players coming back are going to help that, because you want a fit, healthy squad. The manager wants to pick for everybody that's available who he sees as the best team. But I think for a fan base, they're looking to see, like, is there any money there? Is there any scope? Is there people behind the scenes been working on stuff that obviously that we are not enlightened to? And is there something that can give the fans some sort of hope, some sort of excitement moving through January?
Hey, let me ask you both about goal celebrations down the years. Kevin, forgive me, but in your show reel that I watch most mornings, I can't remember many times that I saw you celebrating a goal. But Hamza Igeman last night scored, sat down on the pitch and started wiggling his thumbs, and thankfully this morning, and I'm going to quote the Sun, because I've just done the back page review on Good Morning Scotland. At the controls, it reads, Igeman pretends to play an Xbox after the opener. This actually on the Daily Mail. The Sun says Igeman celebrates opener by playing imaginary console. What is going on there, Ryan? You have your ear to the ground with football celebrations. Why is he playing a games console?
I don't know, but what I was laughing at was, I think initially people were saying he was playing a Game Boy, and then it was pointed out that Igemani, it's reached the point now for us that footballers are so young that he probably doesn't even know what a Game Boy is.
He has no idea.
And it's probably some newfangled thing that they've got nowadays.
Other retro consoles are available.
I mean, at least he's into innocent things like that when he's away from football.
Kevin, I guess if you score a goal, you can celebrate how you like. The thing that I thought there was interesting was that the last time we were at Ibrox, there was fans leaving after 55 minutes. Last night, there seemed to be a smile on the face of the players, and the fans seemed to buy into that. Listen,
it's difficult, Phil. As an ex-player, as a club that obviously I've got real fond memories there. I still get treated like a king every time I go back to Ibrox. It's a club that everybody knows that's close to my heart. I really enjoy my time there, and you want to see the boys do well. You want to see the staff do well. Everybody associated with the club, you naturally want them to do well. But it's difficult to watch, and you see a lot of, I see most stuff obviously online, social media, etc. kind of runs the world as such, and it's never nice to see these protests and kind of videos going out. It was obviously just before Christmas, we seen the video of the fan with James Tavernier, when the boys were obviously leaving Ibrox, and it can be toxic and it can be horrible, but they've got a demand, and I suppose people are entitled to having their opinion, but I'm not so sure as an ex-player I would say it's helpful. But the harsh reality is I know what the institution represents and what people demand, and I don't know if the word is right to use expect, but there's an expectation that they want to see the team up the top of the league. They want to see them competing, and if they don't see that, then we all know over the years that they're quick to voice their opinion. But what I would say is when you see boys like Man scoring goals and doing what he's doing and them winning games, then one thing that you can get is to turn that corner is to consistently win games.
Ryan, it falls to you then to try and unpick the problem with Aberdeen at the moment, and that sounds bizarre because 3 months ago Aberdeen were beating Rangers. They were on this winning run. They were points ahead of the Ibrox side. There was even talk of titles. I mean, I think I might get into trouble from my bosses at the BBC, but I don't really care about that. The BBC rushed out a podcast that said, could Aberdeen win the title? And everybody was buying into it. And wow, how silly does that look now? Apart from the self-inflicted problems of individual mistakes, I mean, last night it looked as if no Aberdeen player could play a 5-yard slide rule pass without making a mess of it. From your vantage point as the sports editor at P&J, what exactly has happened here?
So, what you said there, Phil, is very true, and I think it's been true of all the recent games, in that at the start of the season, Aberdeen, for the first time in a long time, and exactly what fans have been demanding under Jimmy Tilleen, had this kind of clear plan. So you were watching Aberdeen games, and you knew what they were going to do. So they were in that 4-2-3-1. They were pressing collectively. They were winning the ball back quickly. If they weren't, and they were going at that mid-block, they were breaking quickly on teams, and it was all very, going forward, it was all very efficient. It was very fast. They were getting the ball up the park. They were getting in the box.
Swashbuckling.
Yeah, they were creating chances. And to me, one of the biggest things, as you said there, that's going wrong now is the sort of connections throughout the team and the ability to sort of pass the ball. And once they get the ball, not give it away straight away, it has broken down. There have been injuries, and I think we've got to look back at the start of the season that there were some games where they weren't great for 90 minutes, but they were winning by virtue of, being great for 10 minutes. And getting a crucial goal. And that maybe covered up a little bit the fact that during that start of the season, they weren't keeping a lot of clean sheets. I think they had 3 clean sheets in that sort of opening run. They've now got 4 following the weekend's goalless draw. But I just think Papi Gay, he got injured, and then there have been other injuries, and the team's been a bit unsettled, and it's been a combination of factors, basically, and now it feels very much like they've used this January transfer window to this point as a sort of mid-season transitional period, and they're bringing in all these players and they're spending all this money. But in the short term, you're looking at the players they're bringing in, and you're kind of thinking they've got loads of potential, and they clearly come with pedigree, but some of them are coming. At least 2 of the 4 so far are coming in, and you're going, well, they haven't played a lot of football in recent weeks, months. So if they're going straight in the team, there's kind of an understanding there that they're not up to match speed, and things might continue this way for a while before they get better.
So all 4 of the new January transfer signings were involved last night. There was a moment, though, early in the second half, Ryan, and Kevin join in here as well. Topi Keskinen, who was bought for big money at the start of the season, he drove forward, and he was approaching the Rangers penalty box, and he stopped, and he turned round, and he passed the ball back to Graham Shinney. It was like a 10-yard pass on the ground. and then Shinnie got it and lost it, and Rangers went up the park. And it's almost as if the natural attacking instincts right now of Aberdeen as a team and as individual players are being checked, because there is this sense that the Dons need to play almost a European possession-based game where they always need to look for that short pass. Whereas it felt like Keskinen should have just done what instinctively as a wide player he should have done, which is just try and get to the byline, just try and drive forward.
I do think there's an element maybe at the moment of confidence as well, though. So Keskinen at the weekend against Hearts, the ball goes forward a couple of times and he's in behind and he's clean through, and as the defender maybe catches up with him, he decides to shoot when the shot's maybe not on, when he could have kind of checked back and then maybe got a shot on his other foot, or had a better angle to score from. And I do think that if you watch them at the moment, especially at the weekend, maybe an element of this last night as well, it's just a bit disjointed in attack, and I think there's like the clarity with the players of exactly what they should be doing at the moment is maybe broken down a little bit, or they've lost that little bit of confidence. Like at the weekend, you had Jeppe Ockels, the new guy, on one side who clearly isn't up to speed. You had Topi Keskinen, who's ostensibly playing out wide, but he's you find him drifting in the middle all the time. Kevin Nisbet's he's up front, but he's dropping back. Leighton Clarkson's kind of drifting in and out of the game, and so your whole kind of front four isn't really functioning in the way and that's kind of at times that's why you aren't really seeing them, for me, create many chances. Whereas like at the start of the season, it just felt like things were working. Like you referenced that Rangers game. When I look back in that Rangers game in October, that Aberdeen team, it was like really aggressive, really fast attacking, really efficient. And when the ball was forward, like if the ball was at the byline, there were Aberdeen players streaming in the box, and you're maybe not seeing as much of that at the moment. You're not seeing those bodies there to create the chances, take the chances.
And Ryan, just from a tactical point of view, and Kevin, I'll ask you this: if you were a Rangers player last night and you welcomed the visitors, who were playing in the same formation as they'd played just days before at Pataudry at home, and it didn't work, and they were playing the same players, but this pushing forward of their two wide players to join Kevin Nisbet up front, you would have been delighted, because like Yanis Hadji was just pinging balls in behind. He was having the time of his life. He looked like a Harlem Globetrotter at one point with the ball just pinging it all around. I mean, he had a great game because he quickly realised that Aberdeen appeared to have been set up in a way that as soon as they lost the ball, Yaji could just pick them off at the back.
Yeah, I never get too precious about formations, to be honest, Phil. It's especially as a Rangers player, regardless of who you're playing, I never used to look and think, Aberdeen are coming, they're going to play 4-5-1 and they're going to do this, they're going to do that. Just when you're on the pitch, you work it out where the space is, because things can be a wee bit unpredictable, and I suppose players have license to, listen, if you're playing central midfield, you have license to drop in, you have license to run forward, you have, every now and again, if your midfield partner sitting behind you, you have to obviously make sure that you're in a different area. So it's like, I think players are good enough, Phil, to be honest, to know that if you tell them to stand here, there or anywhere, that they're probably good enough to do it. But you have to feel the game, you have to feel what the opposition are doing. And
but would there have been a surprise if you'd have been playing last night to have seen Aberdeen play exactly the same way as they played at home just days before?
Not really, Phil, because I think that most teams come to Ibrox, and when you go to Celtic Park, you're almost predictable what you're going to do. Do you know what I mean? So I'd be really surprised how much detail Philippe Clement and his staff give to the Rangers players on how Aberdeen play. He'll give them wee nuggets here and there, their dangers here or there, a bit similar to like what we got. But I would imagine it would be more about what his team are going to do and what his players are going to do, which is the way it should be, really. I think from an Aberdeen perspective, kind of touching on what Ryan said, is I was going to ask when he was speaking there, as a home fans, obviously I'm not at Pataudry very often, but or never really. I'm not so sure I'd be that welcome there, to be honest. But I can only presume, Phil, that the home fans, are they giving the boys a hard time? they go for this vibrant team, albeit I do think they're overachieving, which I'm not knocking Aberdeen, because I think they made a brilliant start, but I do think where they're at now is probably more realistic. They don't want to keep on falling, obviously. They want to try and find some happy medium and some consistency and win some games. I do think, looking at the table, I think they're 8 points in front of St Mirren and Dundee, so with 10 games to go before the split, I think they will get in the top 6. Is that going to be enough for Aberdeen?
That's a good point. What is the mood like in the city and at Pittodrie?
I think there have been sort of like bits of discontent in recent games, but I do think there's a different character to it this time around. Obviously, Aberdeen have been a bit of a pattern of every sort of late January, February time sacking managers for the last that's 4 managers now that have gone at that time of year. And yeah, maybe if you were sort of like new to it, you would look at Jimmy Tillene's, the way things have gone in recent months, and kind of in thought to yourself, oh, bit of pressure there. But I do think you're seeing Aberdeen fans now, their anger more perhaps towards the players than the manager this time around. I think there's definitely a willingness with Aberdeen support and an understanding that Jimmy Tillene will be given time this season, and longer term, and that he needs it, and there are players in the squad that maybe haven't performed under a few managers now, and it's a case of rebuilding. I also think there's an understanding, as I said earlier, that maybe the run at the start of the season, as good as it was, as enjoyable as it was, and as good as some moments of performances were, that it was perhaps a bit false. Because I think if you looked at Aberdeen at the start of the season, Aberdeen fans, based on the previous couple of campaigns, were looking at the season going, all we want to see from our manager, we're going to be patient, but all we want to see from our manager this season is a bit of progress. So for them, that, for some of them at least, the ones that are sort of maybe slightly less ambitious, that would have been just top 6, something like that, or competing throughout the season for a European place. But the start was so good that I think expectations rose quite significantly. Yeah. And obviously that creates a situation where Jimmy Tillene almost becomes like a little bit a victim of his own success at the start with what's happening now.
We're focusing on this. We're going to move on quickly to just look at one or two other transfers. I guess probably the stat that sums up why indeed we are taking a deep dive into Aberdeen. In the first 11 games of the campaign, 33 points available. Aberdeen won 31 points. In the next 33 points available, Aberdeen have won 4 points. Contrasting fortunes to the Dons under their first season with manager Jimmy Tillene. Listen, guys, time is beating us, but I just want to crack through one or two of the transfer stories that's around, including the what feels the inevitable rolling ball that is gathering steam as it rolls down the hill towards Celtic Park and the return of Kieran Tierney. Kevin Thomson, do you think this will happen? And more importantly, as a former player at the Old Firm, do you think that it's a good move for Kieran Tierney to come back to Scottish football?
So I think first and foremost, Phil, you have to say what a wonderful football player, a real top player, top of the tree really. So if Celtic can get a deal over the line, there's no doubt his alliance towards the club, and a boyhood fan, and his brilliant time there obviously before he's went down south. So I don't think you can get away from the fact that he's had a few niggles and a few issues injury wise, whether that's been for the national team or whether it's obviously been for his club football. But listen, there's no doubt that he's a wonderful football player, and he would certainly bring something big to the club. There's no doubt. So I think the fans have already voiced their opinion how excited they are to get him over the line. So I think it would be a big deal for them, and I'm sure he would go there and do really well, and hopefully he can have a good fit bill of health.
He was on the bench last night for Arsenal and their win over Tottenham. Read into that what you will. At Hearts, Ryan, Zander Clark, new 2-year deal. Zander Clark being kept out the goals by Craig Gordon. Does the fact that he signed a 2-year deal signify that he believes he will regain the number 1 jersey for Hearts and maybe go on to push Craig Gordon out?
Obviously, Zander Clark was playing quite a bit when Craig Gordon broke his leg, and Craig Gordon's come back in and made this sort of like Lazarus-like recovery and go back in the Hearts team. But we've always known that Craig Gordon is at his best is, the best or one of the best goalkeepers in Scotland. I think if you're Zander Clark, you're probably just looking at Craig Gordon's age, maybe thinking, this has got to end eventually. And if I'm patient, over the next couple of years, then I've been in the goals before for Hearts. There's no reason I couldn't be back in the goals again. But he probably recognises as well, Xander, that, as I said, Craig Gordon's quality, and it's probably great for him to be learning off Craig, even though he's an experienced goalkeeper himself.
I wonder what console Craig Gordon would play if he scored a goal. What is he now? 40, 42?
He could go back to the Atari, Big Craigie.
ZX Spectrum, perhaps. ZX Spectrum, of course, wasn't a console; it was a computer. That's how far ago it is.
Never heard of it.
And stop it, Ryan. You're making me and KT feel rather old now. And as far as Kyle Rowles is concerned, he left Hearts yesterday. Neil Critchley saying he'd be surprised if the squad looked the same by the end of the month. Do you think, Kevin, that Hearts might be about to bring in some new faces for the second half of the campaign?
Yeah, I think so. I think they've always had a good budget, Phil. They've always been competitive in the market. Whether it be free transfers popping up, they've always had the kind of firepower really to offer a wee bit extra wages compared to everybody else out with the Old Firm. So I'd be fully expecting the Jambos to do some business and Neil wanting potentially one or two of his own players.
Kevin Thomson, former Rangers and Hibs player, speaking eloquently about Celtic and Hibs this morning. Thank you. Ryan Cryle, sports editor for the Press and Journal. Thank you for giving us a temperature of things in the Granite City. And remember both, and this is a health warning that I would give to anybody listening this morning, a game's console is for life, not just for when you score the opener at Ibrox. Kevin, Ryan, thank you very much indeed. Remember, bright and early every day, a new episode of the Scottish Football Daily podcast will drop for you. Push on your notification, so when it drops, you'll get an alert on your phone, or you can do it the old-fashioned way, the old ZX Spectrum way. You can go to BBC Sounds and click on play, and would you believe it will play? I'm Phil Goodlad. Enjoy the beautiful game, and we'll speak again soon.
This is the shocking moment English football has been dreading.
My name is Moses Swabu, and I used to be a professional footballer. But then I got in deep with organised crime and became a match fixer operating in the English League.
A match-fixing investigator has highlighted 2 matches he says appear to have suspicious betting patterns.
How honest are you going to be with me?
This is 100%. Join me for Sports Strangers Crimes presents Confessions of a Match Fixer. Listen on BBC Sounds.